With us now is Congressman Adam Smith, a Democrat from Washington. Congressman, some of the details that we're getting from this plan coming from our reporter Phil Manning, who does a terrific job on this. He says this deal would grant relief to the UK on steel and auto tariffs, and that the United States would see an easing of digital tax levies in the UK that target large U.S. companies, and they'd also get a pathway to some other agreements. If that's what's in this deal, how much progress do you think it is?
I think it's a good deal with the UK, where every administration is constantly trying to negotiate various smaller trade deals with countries all across the world. And I'm glad that the Trump administration is doing that. That doesn't change all of the tariffs that were put on, gosh, well over 100 other countries and the impact that it's having on our economy. So this is one small piece of the much larger picture. The impact of President Trump's tariffs is going to be very, very negative in the short term. This one deal, even if it plays out the way it's described, doesn't change that.
But you see it as positive. What if this is the first
Absolutely.
of several? What if it's the first of several? What if there's South Korea? What if there's Israel? What if there's India in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, no, I think depending on the details, of course, because as you know, President Trump is given to exaggeration, I guess is a generous way to put it, in terms of what's been accomplished. So we'll see what those details are. What we know is the tariffs that are in place against, like I said, a 10% tariff on just about every country. The limitations on the tariffs on aluminum and steel are dramatically impacting our manufacturing. The massive trade war with China is dramatically reducing port activity, certainly in my district, but up and down the West Coast in a way that's going to impact consumers. So this is much bigger than one, or even, to your point, 2 or 3 other trade deals.
We're getting word that, and reports that as soon as next week, Tuesday, I think, is going to be the day the House Energy and Commerce Committee does its markup on the big Republican tax bill. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that any changes in Medicaid would only affect a very small number of people. That's an exact quote. And he ruled out overhauling federal contributions to state-run Medicaid programs. And he accused Democrats of fear-mongering on the issue of Medicaid. I did note on your social media feed, you've got several post videos where you say you're concerned about the Republicans cutting Medicaid.
Yeah, absolutely. But overall, please understand what a complete joke the Republican budget reconciliation process is. Because what kicked this off? I mean, during the Biden administration, all you heard from Republicans was how the debt and the deficit were devastating. This was a huge problem. They gave incredibly heartfelt speeches about how terrible the debt and the deficit were going to be, and by goodness, they were going to get after it. And that's the reason that they're making all of these cuts across government. It's the reason they're proposing the cuts to Medicaid. Their budget is going to dramatically increase the debt by a couple of $1 trillion. And to help pay for all of the tax cuts they're doing for the wealthiest Americans, you know, they're going to hurt Medicaid. All they're debating now is 2 things. One, how much they're going to hurt Medicaid and poor people who receive those benefits, or whether or not they're going to abandon the entire plan to cut anywhere, do the tax cuts anyway, and drive the debt ever higher. I mean, there is just nothing that is good policy about the Republican budget reconciliation plan.
You, of course, are the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, and Vice President J.D. Vance made a statement about why there has not been a deal between Russia and Ukraine. Listen to what he said.
I wouldn't say that the Russians are uninterested in bringing this thing to a resolution. What I would say is right now, the Russians are asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions in order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much.
He says, we think they're asking for too much. A, how surprised are you that the Russians are asking for too much? B, how surprised are you that Vice President Vance is saying that?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. And understand what Trump and Vance did. Part of the reason that Putin is asking for too much is Trump and Vance gave President Putin a massive green light from the day they got into office. They did 2 things, the 2 things that Putin wants. He wants the U.S. to abandon Ukraine, and he wants NATO divided. So what did Trump and Vance do? They sent every signal from that horrible meeting with President Zelensky that the U.S. was going to abandon Ukraine. They sent that signal. They cut off aid for about a week. They cut off intel sharing. And at the same time, Vice President Vance showed up at the Munich Security Conference in February and threatened Europe on a whole range of issues. The signal was clearly sent to Putin that what he wanted most was going to happen. We were going to abandon Ukraine and we were going to divide NATO. So of course Putin kept pushing at that point. What we needed to do then and what we need to do now is make it clear we are going to support Ukraine, the alliance is going to support Ukraine until Putin stops this war. It is just tragic that it took Vice President Vance and President Trump this long to figure out what was blindingly obvious to any national security foreign policy observer prior to them making that mistake. Are they going to correct it now? I hope. I think they're beginning to better understand what Putin and Russia stand for. Vice President Vance's comments are helpful, but they got a long way to go to adequately send the clear message that we're not abandoning Ukraine until Putin stops his war.
Congressman Adam Smith from Washington.
Sorry, we're not abandoning Ukraine, period. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks, John.
Understood. Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate it.